rail engineer. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a graduate rail engineer at Jacobs. Been with Jacobs for about a bit more than 2 years now. I started at Jacobs as an intern in my final semester at uni, actually. So I graduated from UTS with Bachelor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the start of last year. Once I finished my internship, I rolled over into the graduate program. And currently I'm working with the systems assurance team at Jacobs, which is a bit of a niche field and not directly under civil engineering. We work with a lot of disciplines in the industry as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and next we have Alex.
Hi everyone. My path's probably slightly different. I started my university degree and finished it in Victoria. I did a double degree of architecture and construction management, and I finished that in 2015. So I since then started the graduate program with Probuild in Victoria, which took me over 2 years. And then from there I went into a coordination role, which I've been doing now, I guess, for the last 3 and a bit years. So yeah, it's been a really good experience. I also had the opportunity to move from Victoria to Sydney. So I'm currently now working on the ribbon project on Darling Harbour, which is very exciting and a different project.
Lovely. So we've got a very good mix of people tonight, which will be interesting. So next question, how did you guys choose what pathway to go down, and was there any pivotal moments along the way? So Alex, do you want to start us off, considering you sent it?
Yeah, sure. So my original pathway kind of started by really enjoying architecture and graphics at school and going into architecture at university. Once I started doing my architecture degree, I realised it was quite challenging, quite time consuming, and I wasn't the superstar architect that I would have liked to probably be. I also found that the construction side of things that I was doing lots of my, I guess, elective classes in seemed to resonate a lot more with me in terms of what I really enjoyed. So I moved from a single degree to a double degree in construction management. That was probably the first quite pivotal moment for me, moving to that double degree, because it became a much more rounded understanding of the industry, and from the design to, I guess, the buildability of it all. From there, I finished my degree after 5 years, and whilst doing that, I started working, I guess, as an undergraduate for a small company in Geelong, which is in Victoria, which gave me some really good experience and kind of got me to understand a bit more of where I wanted to go, and people would talk to me about different companies and things, and so I kind of, would keep that in mind. And then finally decided that after uni I needed a bit of a break, so I took a year off and I decided to travel, and in that time I think I really, I assessed what I wanted in my workplace and kind of looked into all those kinds of things of what ticked the right box and what didn't while I traveled around, and I ended up interviewing for Probuild whilst overseas, and I think that was probably what also made me really want to work for the company, because they were willing to still interview me and take me on even though I wasn't even in the country at the time, which was pretty cool. They were happy to Skype me in even though everyone else had to have a person one-on-one interview, and yeah, from there I started the graduate program, and within Probuild you get to do like 5 different modules and do different areas, and from those I found one which was the project coordination one, which I guess again resonated with the kinds of things that I like to do and enjoy. It's quite fast paced. You get a lot of interface with both the subcontractors on site, you've got design in there, you also get to deal with the client a little bit and the consultants. So I think that was why I've kind of taken that pathway, because it meant that I could get to do a little bit of all of the things that I had learned at university.
Lovely. Fabiha, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think for me, during university, I was a little bit confused as to which path I wanted to go down, especially during my early years. I think what sort of made me choose rail specifically was I was always interested in transport and structures to begin with. But for those of you who don't know, UTS has a requirement to do 2 internships during your degree. So I did my first internship at a water consulting company, and I quickly realized it wasn't for me. And I definitely wanted to go into, a transport or a structures field. I think what was sort of the turning point, and I guess why rail specifically, was when trimesters opened up, they actually started offering industry subjects over the summer. So I did a summer subject, I think last year in summer, and it was about high-speed railway. And it was about high-speed railway design, designing the track, designing the train gauge and all the design elements of railway. And yeah, I thought it was probably one of the most interesting subjects that we got to work on. We worked really closely with Transport for New South Wales as well. And yeah, it was really cool. We had to model a slab track for the Japanese Shinkansen train. But yeah, that's why I chose to go into the rail field specifically. It was just one of the most interesting subjects that I did, during university.
Yeah, good to follow your passions. Next up, Jessie.
Yep. So the pathway I've kind of gone down was, to be honest, during uni, I wasn't really certain on where I wanted to go with my civil engineering degree. I just knew that what companies I'd be able to apply for at the end of the degree, but what specifically I'd be doing, I actually had really no idea. I just knew I really didn't like fluid mechanics. Design wasn't the biggest fan of, and soils not the biggest fan of. So I knew coming to these networking events, I was asking the questions to both consultants, engineers, and construction guys, what they liked about their roles, what their days would consist of. And I think ultimately I found sitting in the office, reviewing drawings all day wasn't really my thing. I kind of wanted to be on site, working with subcontractors, seeing things actually come to life rather than just staring at a piece of drawing. So ultimately I decided to go with Probuild. So I went through the grad program, and that's pretty much where I am now. And I'm kind of following the path that Alex has taken on, going down that project coordination role. I think just being able to be around subcontractors, but also getting that design aspect and working with the clients to process different things, and just seeing it all come to life from the beginning stages all the way to the end, I think is the most exciting part of my role.
Yeah, lovely. I'm sure a few of us relate to you there with the fluid mechanics comment. Definitely not an easy subject. And next up, Allison.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was opposite in the sense that I loved fluid mechanics, but have not gone down that path at all. I guess for me, when I did my internship at, as part of usage, you have to, at the time we had to only do 12 weeks. I know it's sort of cascaded into this whole PEP program now, so it's a lot more significant than it was back then. But at the time I was at uni, we had to do a 12-week internship. And I did that in the construction sector for a medium-sized construction firm. And whilst it was an eye-opening experience and good, I realized it wasn't for me. And wasn't for me in the sense that, for a variety of aspects, but I realized I wanted to go into the more project management side of things rather than construction management side of things. So from there, I basically, which you'll all find, you'll probably all do, apply for every grad program that exists on the planet in the engineering sector, and you just kind of hope for the best and go with whichever ones you get. so like from there, just applied for any company that sort of aligned with my values, I guess you could say, like as in, what I was interested in, like what companies were really keen on workplace flexibility, what companies have a strong push on diversity and inclusion, and all of that sort of stuff, like industry engagement and whatnot. And that, I came across Jacobs and I thought this might be a good fit. They also had a project management stream, which not a lot of the engineering consultancies had. It's definitely more present now than it was 5 years ago, but it was quite rare at the time. So yeah, applied, hoped for the best. Similar to Alex, actually, I did a lot of my interviews. I was overseas at the time as well, on uni break, because, what else do you do in those big July holiday breaks? And and then was lucky enough to get the role and had a couple of different options. And I felt like the project management one had that aspect of both of my degrees combined. To make the best use of my skills rather than go down that technical consultancy pathway, which is great, which is what a lot of people do, but it's kind of like the mix between construction management and technical design sort of sits right in the middle. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Lovely. So following on from that quite nicely, the next question is, what would your advice be on how to find opportunities? And then additionally, how do you stay on top of it all when dealing with multiple applications at once and trying your best to make each one unique?
Yep. Do you want me to jump straight in?
Yeah. Start off, keep going.
Yeah. So in terms of staying on top of your applications, I found like a lot of applications have similar questions. That every employer is probably looking for something slightly different, but also things very much the same. Like they're all going to ask you for a CV and a cover letter. So it's a good idea to do your applications in like Microsoft Word, and type out your question answers and whatever. And not to say to recycle them from application to application, but to certainly use the general gist and to modify it to suit the actual question you're answering. Because at Jacobs, as a graduate, we do a lot of the initial filtering of applications, of incoming interns and graduates. So we kind of see like what the caliber of applicants coming through is. And you'll find that a lot of people just simply don't answer the question. So, and that's because they've clearly just copy and pasted it from their, Probuild application, which is construction, and we're an engineering consultancy. So that's the biggest tip, is to absolutely keep a copy of all your answers, but make sure you tailor them to the people you're actually applying for. Keeping on top of them, it's good to just keep like a simple list. Like that's what I did. I just had a Word doc or an Excel sheet and said, yep, this is where I'm up to in this stage. Like I'm up to the video interview, I'm up to the whatever, and this is the deadline, like a little bit of a Gantt chart, I suppose. And then the final bit of advice I'd have is to tap into a network. So whether that be through your connections through SUCE or SUA or whatever societies you're involved with, as well as your friendship groups at university and your team groups that you're working with on assignments, and asking your peers what are they applying for. Like I didn't even know Jacobs was a thing until my friend mentioned it to me, like, oh yeah, I applied for Jacobs. I was like, who the hell are they? Like they sound okay. And that's how you find out about most of your obviously there's the commonly known ones, your Lend-Lease, everyone knows of Probuild as well, but Jacobs is more not as well known. And I only found out about it through speaking to friends. So ask your friends what they're doing. Most of the time your friends will be quite forthcoming with their applications. So help each other out and, try and put your best foot forward. That's probably it from me.
Yeah. Jesse, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll jump on next. Actually, I might have a recommendation a little bit for the SUCE team. So when I was going through my grad program or grad year, coming up to my grad year, the SUCE team I kind of felt helped us out a little bit by providing us a list of different companies, especially because back then we had a careers day at Enmore Theatre. Not Enmore Theatre, the name escapes my mind, but there was a theatre there and we had all the different companies there, and we just created a list and put it on an Excel, Seymour Centre, thank you. So we have create an Excel spreadsheet with all the different companies, and as a group of mates, we'd just go through and see if we, at the beginning of the year, this was maybe February, March, when the applications open, we'd see when the deadlines for different companies were coming up, and we just create like an Excel spreadsheet. And then this way we were able to monitor, hey, this one's construction, and these are the companies I want to apply for. And those are the companies that you'd put a highlight next to, make sure you target those dates. And I know Probuild's application is slightly different from what I believe. We do have a video assessment center first up. I'm not sure if Alex, you did that as well, but yeah, we had a video. So you couldn't really prepare for those questions, but in a way you could, because kind of generic questions. So we had a video, and then obviously we go through the steps of a CV and submitting a cover letters and our resume, and then we tend to different centers. So to stay on top of the opportunities, like Allison said, just making sure you talk to your mates, seeing what companies they're applying for, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, perfect. So just plugging the SUCE website quickly, we do have a careers page that does have a list of internship and graduate roles opportunities. So for all the students, if you want to check that out, it would really help. Next up, Fabiha, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm sure. At UTS, we didn't have anything like SUCE, so we weren't as lucky. We sort of had to source out our own opportunities, and we weren't given a list of all the companies that you can apply for. But, you know, I thought I was being unique in that answer when I was like, oh, you know, I'll create an Excel spreadsheet, and oh, this is when the deadlines are, and this is what events you need to attend. But it sounds like everyone else does that as well. But yeah, that is pretty much what I did to stay on top of applications. I created a bit of a tracker, and it was actually a shared Excel workbook with my friends. So every time we'd hear of an opportunity that people would be interested in, we'd pop that onto that Excel spreadsheet. Again, like Allison said, it was sort of like a Gantt chart, just to sort of see when the deadlines are. We also had a networking event list as well. So any companies that we thought were interesting or anything that we resonated with, we would attend those networking events. So I think that's a good way to find opportunities as well. Attending networking events like these ones, or careers fairs, or other industry panels, or even society events that are run with industry, those are really helpful as well. I think I know a lot of people who have found you know, attending these networking events are really good, because you get to meet industry one-on-one. You get to sort of see, you know, talk to the people firsthand and understand the work culture, understand the people, and sort of get to know more about the company's values and the people itself as well who work in that company, and see if you can, you know, if those company values align with yours, and you should apply to that, obviously. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me.
And Alex, do you have anything to add?
Everyone's kind of covered most of it. The only thing I probably would add is just, yeah, with the networking events, I found trying to go to as many things at university that were offered, even if they just had like a day where there was like a bunch of different companies that had their tables out and there was pamphlets, you know, to take them and make sure I like just noted them all down, just whether it be in the spreadsheet, and just kind of look up each of the websites, not only just for the date, but whether or not they actually were companies that I resonated with. And then I'd highlight those ones just to make sure that I was on top of what their values were, and when I was going, like when I had to apply for them, so I was prepared, rather than, I guess stressing at the last minute and submitting something that probably was a bit half-baked. So like, I think that's probably a really good point as well that Allison made, that like, you know, you want to have a base format of what you're applying with, but make sure that you are answering the relevant questions that they are asking, rather than making it a copy paste, because I think it is quite obvious in the submissions. If you're applying for a job, if you haven't read the values and what a company is about before you submit.
Perfect. All great advice. Now transitioning on to once you've got the job, what was it like entering your first job and what were the most challenging aspects? Anyone want to start us off here? Jesse?
I'll go. So the question was, what was it like coming into Probuild? So my first month, it was relatively quiet. I didn't really know what my roles and responsibilities were within the whole project. So I didn't really start at the beginning. I kind of came on midway. So everyone kind of had their roles. And for me, it was about finding where I fit into that team, what was expected of me. So being able to talk to my engineers, being able to talk to my coordinators and my project manager, just to get a feeling of what my expectations were, what I'm going to be doing throughout the life of the project, was, I think, really important for me heading into the job, even though I really didn't have any idea about construction or the things that go on day to day. And I think a lot of us here that are graduating, we don't really know much about our roles until a couple months in where, okay, we feel comfortable in what we're doing. So I think just an advice to everyone, don't feel like you need to go into day one and the company is expecting you to know everything. They're expecting you to start from zero, but they're expecting you to pick up the ball real quick. So just be prepared to learn, be prepared to ask questions of everyone around you. Harness the information, like leverage off those who are more senior than you. Yeah, they may be busy from time to time, but just make sure you book in maybe a 15-minute, 20-minute meeting with them, just so they can provide their expertise, their experience, and you're able to just leverage off that and kind of learn as days go by.
Lovely. Fabiha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. And agree with you there, Jesse. I think one of the hardest things is asking questions and having the confidence to ask questions, especially if it's your first job. I think you have that mindset where you're just like, oh, I'm going to annoy this person if I ask too many questions. But I think that's really good advice in the sense that you should ask as many questions as you like. And I think that shows initiative as well. When I first started out as an intern, being in the systems assurance team, because it is a bit of a niche field, it wasn't directly related to what I learned at uni. So there was a bit of a learning curve at the start, but I think that's sort of expected in your first role as well. But, my team were really supportive. They sort of understood that it was my first time doing anything like this. They sort of supported my learning. They provided, mentoring and even training sessions, weekly training sessions at the start, just to sort of get me into the rhythm. I think one of my first projects was a bit of a smaller scale project. It was one of the transport access programs, which is just a bunch of station upgrades in New South Wales. So that was one of the first projects that I worked on, which is a lot smaller scale to what I'm working on now. So that was one way Jacobs helped me sort of ease into it, didn't really chuck me in the deep end at the start.
Alex, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, the challenges of when you start in one of these roles is just being worried that you don't have enough knowledge of, the on-site and the day-to-day runnings of how the job works. And I think that was something that I was really nervous about, not even applying for certain roles, because I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I have the experience. But if you don't, give it a go, then you're never going to really get the experience. So I think you just have to come pretty open-minded and honest to be there to just hit the ground and kind of ask the questions and listen and make sure that you do apply yourself where you can. If you're not sure of something, it never hurts to ask. Everyone that is around you knows that, they were there once as well. So it's better to just kind of learn from them. It's also really great to try and find someone on the team that's willing to to take time and mentor you where they can. Take those opportunities as well. If someone asks, if someone's doing something cool and it might not necessarily be part of your role as well, I definitely think it's really good to be like, hey, that thing you're doing, like, that would be really cool for me to understand and learn. And it might not necessarily be relevant, but it does still round out your knowledge of the industry and where you're going. So I think as much as it can be daunting, definitely always ask the question and try and, befriend anyone you can to learn something new.
Lovely. And Allison?
Yeah, I I still remember my first day at Jacobs, and like what I could probably best liken it to is like starting in a new school where like you're coming in like in year 8 and like year 7, so everyone already knows each other. That's what your first day at any job is. Like, you're the new kid. It's a bit weird. You've never met these people before. They're not that funny. Like, they're not your friends. Like, you don't like really, like, other than the fact that you have the common interest of your career path, you don't know them yet, right? But you might know some of them from your interview process, but it's like, it's awkward, like, but you'll find that like with most engineers and like project managers in this field, you just like ask them about what they're doing and they just don't shut up. So it's the easiest like icebreaker. So just ask someone about what like they're working on, or how they got to where they were, because they love talking about themselves. So that sort of makes it a bit easier and a little bit less awkward. But you'll find like I said, the first day, like I was a bit uneasy. I was like, oh God, like I've met one guy at this, or maybe 2 people at this company, and now I'm, Jacobs in our North Sydney office, we have like 800 people. This is nerve-wracking, but within a week, like, you're fully settled in. It's like you've been at that school for years, and these people, you spend more time with them than you do at home, effectively. Thinking, notwithstanding sleeping time, when actual waking hours, you're awake more at work than you are at home. So you want to get along with your colleagues, and you want to have common interests with them. So I just found the best thing was to just, like the other guys have said, just ask heaps of questions about what they're working on, and that might form a pathway for a project that you can jump onto, or they'll get to know you and they'll be like, oh yeah, like Allison was really interested in what I was doing. I might have a role for her on this project. So it's just all about, like, I hate the the buzzword of networking, but it essentially is just that, from the day you start, just making yourself known within the projects and company that you're on, and not sitting back and just waiting for the opportunity to come to you. You sort of taking that, and you'll only progress as far in your career as you push yourself. Obviously great mentors and that can help you with that process, but they won't get you the job. Just know that everyone feels a bit nervous on their first day, to varying degrees, but after day 1, day 2 is much better.
Yeah, and I'm sure it goes up from there. That was very reassuring to just remember that everyone has their first job at some point, so everyone knows what it's like. Next question is how to get the most out of internships. What was your biggest misconception when you entered the industry? Alex, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I think similar to starting your first job, the best thing that you can get out of your internships. I didn't have to do one when I was at uni, so I kind of sought out my own version. But I think, again, it's just about trying to put yourself in as many opportunities as possible and getting the most out of just learning things, being an absolute sponge, if I can kind of use that term. Just trying to ask questions, seek out opportunities where you can. If I'm being a yes person, as much as it can be difficult in finding that boundary sometimes, it does also lead to a lot of opportunity. So that would probably be my things with that. In terms of my biggest misconception of probably construction is that I would never ever work with another female. So I have been very, very pleasantly surprised. I think that I always thought that, you know, my percentage numbers in construction management were, you know, obviously skewed, but they weren't too bad. And then when I went into the industry, I was quite concerned working for a tier 1 construction company that maybe I wouldn't, you know, I'd be quite a minority. But Probuild, and I know that the industry itself is changing a lot, and there is a lot to foster that equal opportunity, which has been fun. I think some other things is maybe that, you know, it's a fast-paced industry and everything's changing at a really rapid rate, but I think there are lots of things that are still, you know, still changing with time. And yeah, I think it's a lot more difficult to get things over the line than I once upon a time thought, especially with just innovation and yeah, all of those kinds of things in the industry.
Yeah. Fabiha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. On that note, Alex, my manager actually calls us sponges. As an intern, he actually used to refer to us as sponges because we absorb the most information. I don't know. But yeah, that the advice is that I guess you need to sort of take the initiative to ask questions like we sort of already alluded to before. I think the other thing is outside of work as well. So get involved in extracurricular type of things. I know, you know, just talking about Jacob specifically, we have a lot of networking things or networks to join, like the careers network or the women's network. It's a really good way to meet people across the company. So you're not just secluded into, you know, your specific team. But yeah, it's really, really good way to network with other graduates, you know, in other teams, and a good way to, I guess, internally network within the business, even get exposed to like senior management who are really passionate about those types of networks. And if you are, you know, keen on this type of university engagement type of things, there's always someone else in the company that's also interested in that, and that's how you sort of you know, meet them through those types of events and through those joining those types of networks. Biggest misconception, I think, is probably the same as you, Alex. I thought there wouldn't be that many females in the company, but we definitely do have, I think we have a 50-50 ratio of female to male in our in the rail company, team anyway. I think the other thing was how much experience you need to have. I think I sort of thought that, you know, you had to be a pro in AutoCAD and you need to be a pro in, you know, SolidWorks, otherwise you wouldn't get an internship or a graduate role. And I thought that's what industry expected from their interns. It's definitely not the case. I think transferable skills are much more important and something that you use on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, whilst it's important to have technical skills and it is an advantage, it's not mandatory, or it's not a deal breaker if you don't know those software as well as you think you should. I think the other misconception is that how much you actually use what you learned in uni. I think in my head, I sort of just thought, I don't know, I'd be drawing like bending moment diagram every day or something, or like, I don't know. It's definitely not the case. I guess it depends, you know, what kind of job you go into and what kind of industry you go into as well. But in my role specifically, we don't do bending moment diagrams and shear force diagrams. And whilst it's important to know that, and it is the basis of your job, I don't think it's, yeah, again, not the be end and all type of thing. Yeah, I think that's pretty much from me.
Lovely. Alex? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Justin. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, like I previously said, like you start your grad program from day dot, and both Alex and Fabiha said this, that you got to be a sponge. You just got to take in everything that everyone has to say, and don't really eavesdrop on other people, but, you know, keep what other people are saying in the back of your minds, back of your heads, and just be an active listener to other people's conversations, not personal conversations, but obviously work-related questions. So just in case something down the line, if someone's not here and you're forced to step in for someone, you're able to hit the ground running. You're able to take on more information than people thought you had. So that's one key thing that I really picked up on during my first couple months there. And also finding a mentor within, like, your senior engineers, or someone that's always on site. I'm able to go out and be like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Can you show me this, or can you show me that? And just these people, like Allison previously said, they love to talk about themselves, or they love to explain to you what they're doing. People love what they're doing. So just make sure you go out and everyone's pretty open, and keep an open mind to everything. Don't be so closed off. And, you know, you probably enter a company and you're like, hey, this is what I'm here to do. But you might be able to change directions 2 or 3 times within your first couple of months there, or during your internships, and you never know what that might lead to. So I think keeping open is one of the big things. A common misconception for me was when I read the contract that I originally signed, with the hours that I was meant to be doing. And I think I said it was 8 to 5 p.m. And I was like cheering, because originally I was like thinking 9 to 5, and I hear construction with long hours, and I was hearing 8 to 5. I was like, that's not too bad. First week that I started, first day actually, my boss said, hey, I expect you to be here 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I was forced to stay late to 6 o'clock. I'm like, when do I get to go home? And then this kind of never really ended, or never really stopped. So still working 6 to 6 p.m, 7 p.m. But you kind of learn to enjoy it. The first couple of weeks, getting around those 12-hour days are pretty difficult, especially when the project starts to pick up. But being around a good environment, and this is where it really comes back to finding a company that fits within your values, finding a team that you get along with on these networking nights. So that's why these are really important for you, making sure you get along with all the workers, because 12-hour days can be extremely long when you're with a group of people that you don't really get along with, and every day is a struggle to get up for. But for me, it's getting easier and easier. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, were long days, yeah, they can be long, but they're also pretty fun when you're enjoying what you're doing and you have a good team around you.
That's good to hear. And now if I've got this correct, would the last person be Allison?
Yep.
Yeah.
In terms of like making the most of an internship, I don't necessarily feel like I did make the most of my internship. I think I kind of just sat back and was like, oh, they'll tell me what they need me to do and I'll just do it. Which is like because I was busy. So I was like, you know, I'm too busy to possibly be doing anything else. So I'll just kind of do what they tell me to do, which is like an okay approach. Like, it's like, you know, it's satisfactory, it gets the job done. They'll probably offer you a grad role afterwards, possibly. But in terms of making the most of the opportunity, I wish I was involved more. I wish, like the other guys have said, asked heaps of questions. I don't think I did that by any means. And maybe that's because I kind of knew I wasn't going to go down the construction sector pathway, but I wish I still asked those questions and made that most of that opportunity, so that I knew probably more sure of what I wanted to do. I feel like I did make the most of it to an extent, but I wish I could have tapped into the networks there a bit more. And then in terms of Jacobs, like, I didn't do my internship with Jacobs, but if I was to do it, things that I would recommend people doing is to get involved with all of our networks and employee networks, that is. So, you know, our diversity and inclusion teams, our union engagement teams. It's just a really good way to meet people and, you know, to make friends and, you know, in the organization, make work a little bit more enjoyable outside of the day-to-day, you know, aspects of your role. You know, like your entire work day as an intern doesn't have to be filled up with what we call in consultancy is billable work, which is work we can charge to clients. It can also be occupied with things like attending an event such as this, or you know, going out to a uni careers fair, which, you know, we do all the time. You know, that's part and parcel of your job, which is a bit of business development. So yeah, just saying yes to every single opportunity. Like when I was in my first year at Jacobs, and you know, I was like, yeah, I can be the lead of our we have a disability committee, and we have a committee for First Nations engagement. I was like, yeah, I can do that. I got like heaps of free time. And yeah, it was full on and busy, but by saying yes to those opportunities, you know, whilst this wasn't part of my internship program, anyone can say yes to those opportunities and get involved from the get-go. And it's just a really good way to get that broader reach within the business. I'll just end quickly on the misconceptions. I sort of slightly different to Jessie's in that I thought my work-life balance was going to be not good. I was like really worried about like the hours, the commute, because I don't really live anywhere near our office. But it's actually been better than I expected. So I guess that was my misconception. Like with Jacobs, we have a flexible work policy, so we can work whatever hours we want, essentially. If you have a formal agreement with your manager, you know, you can have adjusted schedules. It doesn't have to be the typical 9 to 5. So I guess just seeing that a company has that, and you know, a lot of companies do these days, and in some companies it's more doable than others, obviously for obvious reasons, you know, site versus non-site work. But yeah, just seeing that I could have a life outside of work was really nice, and I didn't expect that.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll just quickly move on to the Q&A questions that the students have submitted. Just because we are close for time, we'll try and answer these very quickly. So everyone should be able to see that screen there. So we'll start with the most upvoted question. So what skills would you recommend first and second years to build up to get an attractive CV for graduate roles? And does just one person want to answer this question?
I can jump in there if you like. Yeah, so in terms of first and second years building up to attract graduate roles, it's like your CV is pretty key. So you want to like build that up to look as desirable to a prospective employer as you can. So getting involved in like extracurricular activities, getting involved with societies, like on the committees, you know, volunteering as a faculty rep. I know that that's a possibility at UCID because I did that myself. Volunteering in your local community. Obviously, academically, the stronger your performance, the more desirable you're going to be to an employer. So it's not the be all and end all, but if someone could hire someone with a 90 WAM or a 40 WAM or a 50 WAM, like they're probably going to look at the 90 WAM first. So, and that's not to say, yeah, that's the only thing we look at, but it certainly helps. So being realistic, trying your best, but also making up for that WAM by getting involved in everything else that you can. It just sets that precedence that when you start work, you're going to be keen to get involved in things. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the next question. So do you guys think your uni marks had more of an impact in landing in your graduate roles, or were there other elements that favoured you more?
I think I'll jump on the back of Alex. You want to go, Allison? No, Alex, you can go.
I think for me personally, as much as uni marks are always going to be a benefit, I find that life experience and being able to have, I guess, like other skill sets that you can incorporate into, you know, the roles, like those tangible skills of, you know, communication and time management and those kinds of things. I think they are really important. If you have the opportunity to go out and do some things and, you know, be able to transfer those skill sets, I think that they usually translate really, really well, especially in an interview process. I don't know if you want to add on the back of that, Jessie.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like marks are a big part of why companies favour you. But for me, my marks, I know for myself, my marks weren't that great, but I was able to back that up with industry experience that I had, and also just general life experience. And also when I was at the University of Sydney, I was part of the Project Management Society. Allison, you might know about this. And also part of different societies, and just being involved with different societies really looks good on your resumes, and being able to take senior roles in those, I think companies do look favourably upon those.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll move to the next one. Do you guys get to choose what projects you work on? For example, if you're tasked to work on a project that you don't feel comfortable with, can you ask to relocate? Has anyone been in that position before?
I have, if no one else has.
Would you
Yeah, I
like
have
to-
too, but you go, Alex. Yeah.
I have, yeah, I guess it's slightly different probably to what Allison would have been in, but most of the time when I started, you kind of get put on task. Like when you're a graduate, you kind of get put on a role, and you go through the motions of working on that project, and then you make good relationships with certain people. And as you move through the graduate program, I guess you want to try and hold on to those relationships. And if you do get into a situation where, say, you're working in head office and you're waiting on your next project, you can ask and use those relationships that you've built to, be favored for another project. There is this concept within P&C where they want to make talent management. So if you have worked on a project for too long, you can always speak with our people and culture team, and they look at how long you've been on a project for, and maybe what might be more suitable to you. It's definitely always an open door. And I think that if you don't ask in a lot of these situations, people don't know. And that is what I've always been told, is like, you've got to just make sure that you keep communicating with the people around you to be able to have those opportunities to maybe go onto a project that you really want to go onto, rather than just getting moved around.
Allison, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, pretty much Alex nailed it. The only thing I could really add is that, yeah, you're never forced, I suppose, to work on anything that you don't necessarily feel comfortable working on, in a sense that, what you work on in any role, being a grad or a senior engineer or a principal engineer, depends on what projects your company wins. So you can only work on the scope of what your company is actually working on. But that issue aside, if your team's winning a lot of work, you do get a good choice. But if your team's a bit light on work, you kind of just, you do what you need to do to keep busy. But if that's the case, that's not forever. It's probably a short period of time. So you do get good, you do get a good voice and a good opinion on what you actually want to work on.
Perfect advice. And so how are you and your team celebrating big wins with COVID around? So Jacobs, do you guys want to go first?
I'll get this one, Allison.
Yep.
How are you and your team celebrating big wins? We tend to have, if we do have a big win in the company, we tend to have virtual drinks with the whole team. I guess we do celebrate individual wins as well. So we have this, Jacobs has this thing called TAP Awards. So if you do, exemplary work, or if you do something that's really well done, then someone can nominate you for a TAP Award, which is pretty much a TAP Award, meaning, you get a pat on the back saying, oh, good job on doing, do you know what TAP stands for, Allison? I'm not really sure.
Timely
awards.
something. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So that's something that my team does pretty frequently. And I think my manager is pretty forthcoming with these TAP Awards. So he tends to really recognize your efforts on projects and big wins as well. Do you want to add on to that, Allison?
Yeah, no, that pretty well covers it as well. Like we, in my team, how we operate is we're for the large part, mostly always in the past on big projects. So like ones you might have heard of, like Sydney Metro and things like that. So if we win, it's normally a pretty big win. And then, you know, in the meantime, we also do little bits of internal work within the business. So we don't really celebrate that stuff. But if we win a pretty big job, yeah, there'll be, you know, team catch ups, and even mid-project, like we'll have a team get together via Teams, and it's, you know, it's like 20 people on the call. It's a bit awkward, you know, everyone's interrupting each other, trying to speak, but then after the first 5 minutes, you sort of set into a good groove and everyone's sort of having a nice chat. And then another thing that, you know, on some projects, you know, the company might send you a hamper, or the client might send you a hamper and thank you, you know, all within anti-bribery and corruption protocol as well. I'll add that. But yeah, you know, just to thank you for your work. So yeah, little bits and pieces.
And then Probuild, does someone want to answer that from your guys' perspective?
Yeah, I'll go. So recently our teams celebrated achieving OC, so occupational certificate, for the building. So we celebrate, obviously, the first stage we celebrated with a boat cruise, but now with COVID around, the only way we're able to celebrate stage 2, just having a few maybe drinks on site, not on site, but in the work office with just the team. I think there's nothing better than just having an afternoon off, you know, finishing at 12 o'clock, getting some takeaway, and just having some beers with the team and just celebrating that way. I think there's nothing better than that. Just taking a day off or half a day off is a pretty big reward in itself.
Yeah, of course. So lastly, what would everyone's final advice be for students who are transitioning to the workforce? So Allison, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, sure. So that was our advice transitioning to the workforce. My key bit of advice on transitioning is just to be, you know, open to every opportunity that you might have. You know, apply for, you know, really think about your applications and who you actually want to work for, and have quite deliberate applications, so that, you know, whichever jobs you do get, there might be multiple, that you actually do want to work at each of these companies, because you don't want to sour any relationships with those companies if you do get the job and turn them down because you weren't really all that interested. So it's an investment of their time and your time. So make sure that you're investing your time in something you're actually really keen on doing. So yeah, my advice is just to, you know, prepare as much as you can, you know, be well read on the company, make sure that you know what it is that they actually do and what they want to achieve. And also, like, you know, make the most of this time that you have at uni. Like your uni years will be some of the best years of your life, and enjoy it. You know, I know we can't travel at the moment, but try and enjoy this time that you have, you know, remote learning, to spend time with friends and family. And, you know, because once your work life starts, it really does change your life. So I guess I'd say enjoy the time you've got now. That's not to say that the work life is not as good, but it's different. So make the most of what you've got so that you can really look back and appreciate that you made the most of every opportunity when you had it.
Yeah. Alex, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that last point of Allison's. Make the most of the time that you have when you're at uni. It is actually, as much as you're busy and there's lots of things happening, you know, try and relish in those moments. For me, some advice about transitioning to the workforce is probably around making sure that wherever you do end up working, that you do have culture and values within the company that you like to see. You know, as we have, like, you know, do extracurricular sporting activities, and we have like a PT class that we do after work, and there's all those kinds of things. As much as we work really hard, there's lots of like integrative activities and things like that we can do, which are really good. I think that making sure that you work for a company or you're looking for a role that's got good culture and aligns with your values is so important. And on that, I think my other thing would just really be just make sure that you're applying for roles that you actually are interested in, and the company is something that you have, you know, interest in. There's no point in just sending out 50 applications for jobs that you don't actually care about, because it will show through in your application. And then if you do end up getting the job, it's kind of, in a way, a bit of a waste of everyone's time. I personally, I literally only applied for Probuild when I applied for my graduate projects, and I really, really wanted the job. And I think that kind of shone through in my graduate application, because I was just so eager, and everything about, I was well read, and I was so keen on what Probuild stood for, that yeah, it made it a lot easier for me to you know, go for the project, go for the job, and accept the opportunity. So yeah, that's probably my point.
Fabiha, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think Allison touched on this before, but I think what the message was just to say yes to every opportunity that you're given, and that's you know, once you start your internship, when you're looking for your internship, I'd say try to network, or try to build your network as much as you can. You know, attend these networking events, attend things like this, and try to talk to young professionals or graduates, because, you know, they've been through the process. So, you know, they'd be able to give you the best advice, or, you know, they'd be able to tell you what the company culture is like. And I think that's pretty much it. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. I guess that's probably the main takeaway for me as well. As an intern, or as you know, starting your first job, I think it's really nerve-wracking to ask questions, and but yeah, I think it's really important to ask questions, and, you know, people understand that you're a beginner, and like everyone said before, everyone's a beginner at the start, so everyone starts somewhere. It's pretty much for me.
And lastly, Jessie.
Yeah, so transitioning into the workforce, I think one piece of advice I just give to everyone is pretty much what you put in is what you get out of it at the end of the day. How open you are to everyone else is how much people are willing to pretty much talk to you, pretty much give you advice, teach you things. But if you're closed and people aren't willingly going to approach you and give you advice on different things. Another thing is perfect work-life balance. Understand that working is a big part of your life, but when you go home, you got to put work aside. You got to make time for yourself. So being able to find a hobby that you can do after hours, from like 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, like whether that be reading a book, playing tennis, going for a run, being able to moderate your life so it's not all pro work, I think was really important for me. I didn't really figure that out until maybe a year into the role, where I was like working. I didn't really have time for myself, and I kind of had a mini breakdown where I was like, I need to do something about this, and I got into tennis, and that's been really good for me. So being able to moderate your emotions, being able to moderate your time, and trying to find work-life balance. Not straight away, you're not going to find a perfect balance 3 months into the job, but it might take, I think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, that's all perfect advice, and I'm sure that very necessary for all of us right now. So I just want to say thank you again for all the panelists for taking the time to come here today and share their experience. It's been very valuable, and I'm sure everyone has learned a lot, and we'll be able to put this all into action in the first few months, hopefully, for all those applications. So before everyone logs off, could everyone quickly turn on their cameras so that we can get a quick group photo? Can we get like 4 more so that we have a full screen? Yeah. Just one moment. Perfect. So just a reminder for all the students that SUCE is running a Minecraft design competition this Friday night, and we've got judges from WSP and ARIP. We've got a few spaces left, so getting quick, as it isn't a really great networking opportunity, and from tonight I'm sure we all know how important that is. And we also have our Women in Civil panel happening next Wednesday. Well, thank you once again, and I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.